Hello and welcome to Tech Talks with Student 4 and Transfer Student 1. Say hello.
Hello.
Okay, so now that we're going back to school from the summer, at least in Canada we are, I thought it would be a good idea to talk to you people about the different types of technologies you can buy for when you go back to school. A lot of people are talking about different computers and tablets and phones and what have you, so I thought it would be a nice change to talk about the different peripherals you can get, like mice and keyboards. So let's start off with talking about mice. Transfer Student 1, can you tell us about why we should be using mice?
Well, since trackpads are really hard to get precision on, it's good general in cramped spaces, but I find I cannot use for doing accurate stuff, like say I want to make a good tile screen my project in Paint. I can't do that well. So I use a mouse that has a lower DPI so that I can get the accuracy. Now, do you care to explain what DPI to the people?
DPI stands for dots per inch, and it pretty much means how fast your mouse can track your movement. So having a DPI of say 500 is pretty slow, and having a DPI of about 2500 is, well, pretty fast for most people. My current mouse has about 800 DPI, and that's pretty much standard speed for most usage of mice. So let's talk about the different types of mice out there. First of all, you might notice on packaging that a lot of companies distinguish between optical mice and laser mice. So optical mice pretty much use an LED light sensor to track the mouse's movement, and laser mice use, well, you guessed it, lasers. So
the
Transfer
difference.
There's a big difference there. So Transfer Student 1, based on your experience, which do you think would be better for most students' use?
I actually haven't looked between the two. I guess the laser mice would be for the ones that want an expensive mouse that they could have last long and be very accurate. But I guess if you want a cheaper mouse, you just need a mouse because you need one, you would like one, and you don't have a lot of money for it. I would with an LED mouse, or even a ball mouse.
I'm not even sure they sell the rolling ball mice anywhere. I haven't seen one on sale in a long while. But yeah, that's pretty much what I was thinking too. Optical mice tend to be much cheaper than laser mice, so I was looking for a good mouse to use, and my budget was anything under $25. Because, student life, I don't make a lot of money. I don't even have a job yet, QQ. So, a lot of optical mice tend to be pretty cheap and within most people's price ranges. Even wireless ones are usually under like $20, $15. But decent laser mice at a similar scale of comparability would be around $20 to $30. Wireless and wired mice. So basically, yeah, if you're on a really low budget, you might want to go optical when you're buying a mouse. Now, the downside of that is that laser mice can track more accurately on more surfaces. There's a famous tale of how optical mice will glitch out now and then if you're tracking on a black surface. Probably because the light reflection and whatnot. So I would personally recommend that students go for a cheapo laser mouse, but if you have a bit more cash to spare, then definitely go for a laser mouse. Transfer students, why don't we talk about wireless versus wired for mice?
Oh, well, I'll get into that. Okay. For wired mice, you might have, let's just say there's different types of wired mice. You can have the wire where it's plastic coating, right? And then you can have like a rope like braided coating, which is stiffer, but it also, I guess, lasts longer. The difference between wired and wireless, for wireless mouse, you do need to have a battery for the actual mouse itself, but you don't have a wire to get all messed up in. So it's really good for laptops and if you're on the go. Now, a wired mouse is better as in it could probably send better data. I know the transfer rate is a lot faster wire than it is if it's wireless, and you don't need a wire. You don't need a bad actual mouse itself. I personally would prefer wires. Whenever I really need a mouse, I am sitting down, and I do not need I don't need to have space, so I can have this wire splayed out over there and this wire over here. Where a wireless would be good if you are in really cramped situations, or you have a mess and you're like, I need to clean this desk up. Just have a wireless mouse and a laptop in front of you.
Yeah, it's pretty much for that reason that I got a wireless mouse for myself. I got it pretty cheap, about $20, I think, including tax and everything. But yeah, so I find that wireless mice tend to respond just teensy bit slower than wired mice do. And while that can be an issue for hardcore gamers, well, anyone that plays fast-paced games, so pretty much no one alive these days.
Yeah.
Like, come on, kids these days gaming, that's not gaming, but I don't want to get into that.
No,
but
it's not the show for that.
For everyday usage, a wireless mouse can be, in fact, pretty great. As long as you make sure to watch out for the charge on the battery. They're getting pretty good with that. Apparently the battery on my mouse right now can go for a year without, replacing the battery, and it's a AA, so that's easy to do. But, a big issue with wireless mice is the nano receiver that you have to plug into your computer. These are very easy to lose. Now, Logitech is doing a really great thing where you can store the nano receiver inside your mouse. You just I have a Logitech M310 wireless, and you simply slide out the battery covering, and there's a slot for the receiver right beside it. So if you lose your receiver, then you've lost your mouse.
Can't you not get sorry, I was just looking up something. Can you not get replacements for some companies? I know some companies use like a generic piece instead of an actual one per mouse basis, I guess how you would say it, sort of. But I know you could probably get a replacement receiver, but it is going to cost you almost as much as the mouses, so don't lose them, people.
Yeah. I haven't lost my receiver yet, but it's only been 2 or 3 days since I actually got this mouse. But, it really depends on customer support. Now, I'm gonna move on to the different companies that actually sell mice. A really great one would be Logitech. I'm in love with Logitech mice myself. They're a little bit expensive, but for the most part, Logitech mice tend to do really great. They stand up to a lot of abuse, corded or wireless mice, and above all, there's so much great quality in them. The ergonomics are great. I'm using an ambidextrous mouse, so that's a mouse that you can use comfortably with both your right and left hands. And you know what? I normally hate ambidextrous mice, but Logitech does a really great job in these. I mean, I'm just using it like my old Logitech mouse. And man, that old one was a tank. I put it through everything. 3 years later, it's still going strong. Now, I don't know how this new one's gonna hold up, but according to reviews, it's a pretty tough guy. So, you know what? I'm just gonna wait and see. As long as it doesn't get beat up on my backpack and fall to pieces when I need it during class, then I'm gonna be happy. I'm probably gonna invest in more Logitech. Now, Microsoft also sells a bunch of mice, pretty much similar ones as Logitech's cheaper versions. These are both optical and laser, and of course wired and wireless.
Would you say you could get some cheaper laser ones from if you wanted a laser mouse, you wanted the precision, and you use them on all sorts of surfaces, but you also wanted a cheap mouse? Would you say that you could get it from Microsoft?
I would definitely say you could get it from Microsoft a bit cheaper than you could from Logitech. I mean, I was at the computer store a couple of days ago, and I was just looking around, and I saw that Microsoft products tend to be cheaper than the Logitech products. I'm not sure about the warranties on them, but from what I've seen from Microsoft mice, they can be a little bit more fragile than Logitech mice, especially if you're not paying for more than about $25. Meanwhile, Logitech, they've got great quality, no matter the price range. However, if you're on a really low budget, you just need a mouse to get things done with, then definitely, yeah, go with Microsoft. If your budget's a little more high-end, then, you could always look at gaming mice. Yeah, I think Transfer Student 1 has more experience there.
Can I tell them my mouse?
Yeah.
My mouse that I have right now. It's wired, so I get it. It's the braided wiring, so it's a lot stiffer, and it catches up in itself, but it doesn't. It stays together. Nice. It's I think Mad Catz Rat 5. This is fancy, but it's not the highest end. I have 2 buttons on the side that you can program yourself, and there's a programmer thing. I have 4 DPI settings, so that's the dots per inch, I believe it is. Right, Dorian?
Yes.
So dots per inch settings, and I have 4 of them preset. I have 800, 1600, 3200, up to 5600 DPI, which is ridiculously high. And there's a button that can switch between those 4. I have 3 different programmable settings. So, say the 2 buttons on the side. Say I was using them for this is this brush and paint, and this is this other brush and paint. I can hit this button. Those 2 buttons switch up. I have a button that cuts the DPI half when I hold it down. So, say I am in 1600, but I really want this precise. I don't want to change my DPI. I hold that button down, right down to 800, and it slows it down. It also has adjust palm grip, so you can make it a short mouse or more of a longer mouse, depending on the size of your hand. And I also have the normal scroll wheel, and it like a side scroll wheel. It does help me in stuff like Paint or GIMP, the free version of Photoshop. It basically allows me to scroll from side to side there. There's also mass controls, so if you want a heavier mouse, not as much of a weight, you want something that's nice and chunky in your hand, you can put more weights into it and not have such a light mouse.
Okay, so really that's about it for the mouse section of our Tech Talks Back to School edition. So let's move on to another really important peripheral, keyboards. Now, a lot of people are using iPads in class or different types of tablets, but we all know that these have really low precision. They're hard to type really fast on when taking notes. So a lot of laptops come with their own built-in keyboards. That's really one of the most distinguishing features between laptops and tablets, that laptops tend to have the keyboards. But really, what can you do with a laptop's keyboard these days? They're pretty, low-quality builds for the most part. They all try to copy off the old Apple design. Yeah. You know them as chiclet keyboards. They're really flat,
Very flat.
I'm trying to type on one right now, and you don't have to press very far down, you don't have to apply a lot of force.
Yeah.
And I, for one, don't like that when I take notes during class. Or I was talking. So, yeah, it's really easy to press the wrong key when you're trying to type fast with a chiclet keyboard. That's from my own user experience. I've heard that some people have actually a better experience typing on chiclet keyboards. But, oh man, I have a really funny story about when I was trying to take a notes during class, and pretty much every other word was unintelligible. Like, instead of the, I was, like, pressing, like, R, G, like, I don't know, W? And I couldn't even figure out what I was trying to type later on, and that cost me on my exam. So, you know what? Like, it can be hard to carry around a keyboard in your backpack, but if you're able to do it, I definitely recommend you invest in one. It's easy to get a small keyboard, wired or wireless. It doesn't really matter when all you're doing is, taking notes during class.
I've had problems with my keyboard as well. I'm missing my E key at the moment. It has broken off because my fingernail got caught in it. Because it's a chiclet design, it's very thin and low down, and you can't. It's hard to put it in. I really wish I had a deeper keyboard so I could actually give the button back. That's all I wanted to say. Continue talking. I hate keyboards. And
that's another issue with chiclet keyboards. You can't take the keys out, so that you can actually clean the keyboard, the keys, or if there's like a nail stuck in there. And really, that's why I honestly prefer to type on a mechanical keyboard. Now, these tend to be a lot clickier and bigger than what you might want to use during school, but I'm still going to talk about them because they're really great, and if you're going to be writing essays on your computer, then you will definitely want a mechanical keyboard.
Before we talk about
Transfer Student 1, can you tell us about the different types of keys?
Well, before I go about that, we have to talk about bottoming out. That's what we have to talk about first, right?
Well, yes. I completely forgot.
When you're typing on your keyboard, and you're hitting all the buttons, and you can feel the keys hit the bottom. That's as far low as they go. That is known as bottoming out. Now, this actually will slow down your typing. You don't need to bottom out. Mechanical keyboards it's like a two-switch design where they are, how would you describe it? It's like it goes off.
You press it, there's an actuation point where it registers the keystroke, and then it will bottom out. And then it'll spring back up. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, so it doesn't actually hit the bottom. The actual key goes off before you hit the bottom, which allows you to just tap the buttons in a quick time, and without having to actually hit them all. So I have just a list. I can send it to you right now of mechanical keyboard types that we can go through.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Let me just get to this list. They're calling key switches. Yes.
Okay. First one is known as the Cherry MX Black switches. So there's no tactile feedback. It's not clicky. And it's about halfway down the key press, it will actually go off, and instead of it's 34 millimeters to the actual bottoming out, but the actual key will go off at 2 millimeters, which shows how mechanical keyboards they already give off before they actually hit the bottom. They are non-tactile, so they don't give back. You don't feel them, or you don't hear them click, which a lot of people don't like. Do you like that?
Like, for me, that reminds me too much of the chiclet keyboard design, except a bit thicker. So I prefer, the clicky keyboards with the auditory feedback. I don't really care about tactile feedback. So I just, want to hear it when I press the key. Which is why I don't like to buy Cherry MX Black keyboards.
So, would you say this is like it wants to go is used to like a laptop keyboard, but they don't want to go into the full loud, and they don't want to feel all that. They just want a keyboard that's expensive.
Yeah, honestly, like Cherry MX Black switches are only good for gaming. I've tried typing on them before. I can't really type at my full speed. I'm at about 80% of my full speed with Cherry MX Black, and that's definitely an issue for me. But, if you're a gamer and you want a Cherry MX Black keyboard, then, so you avoid hitting the wrong key every now and then, yeah, go for it, but for school purposes, I would not recommend Cherry Black switches.
Okay, the next one on this list. Cherry MX Brown. They're different than the blacks.
They're very different.
These are a tactile switch, so that they will give feedback to you. How would you describe that?
So when it hits the actuation point, when the keystroke is registered, you will feel a slight bump. And that bump is transferred to your finger, and that lets you know you've pressed the key far enough, and you can move on to the next key.
So, would you say this is good for? Would this be someone who wants a keyboard but doesn't want one that's loud?
Yeah, like if you're trying to take notes during class, and the classroom is pretty big, and that means you could probably pull off a Cherry MX Black keyboard. It should be quiet enough that the professor or teacher won't be disturbed. A couple of people around you might be, but who cares, as long as you're taking notes really fast. And, like, these are pretty good switches. They would honestly be my second favorite Cherry switches. And I would definitely recommend these for school purposes, whether it be taking notes or writing long essays.
Okay, the next of the Cherry MX switches is the Cherry MX Blue, and then the brown, and different than the black. These ones are tactile and clicky, so you can feel them. They do have that bump, and they make a click sound when you push them down. So it gives back through the senses of touch feedback, and feedback through audio. They are. People say they're the best for typing, but do you not like them for typing? I think you have an opinion on this.
I've tried out some Cherry Blue keyboards, most recently the Razer Black Widow, and honestly, I'm in love with this keyboard for typing. These switches for typing.
Yeah.
They're really light, so they're easy to press, and with the tactile and clicky feedback, I'm not bottoming out on every single keystroke other than when I press space, and it's really easy to go above my usual typing speed by around 10%. So, I would definitely love these switches on my keyboard when I'm writing a really long, multi-page essay. But when I'm taking notes during class, I would not want these because they're simply a bit on the loud side. There is a way around that, though. You could buy O-ring dampeners for the tactile, for the sound feedback. But, that would be a little more expensive, and keyboards with Cherry Blue switches are pretty expensive already. So, really, it depends on your price range, and it depends on where you're going to be using them. So if you're using them, in your dorm room or or at home writing essays or something, definitely try to go for Cherry Blue. Of course, your opinions might differ.
Okay, the next of the Cherry, just because there's 1,000 of them. The Cherry MX Clear. Now, these are the browns, but they are known to be stiffer. Can you explain what they mean by that at all, or?
You have to use a lot more force to press them down than the browns, which I haven't really typed on or tried out the cherry clears, but in some ways that might make it feel like a bit more similar to the blacks and the browns. But again, you get the tactile feedback, so that definitely allows you to type faster. So, you know, if your typing is a little heavier than the average person, then you might want to look into clears instead of any other key switch types.
Now we actually have the forces. As a note, for the browns, the peak force of the switch actually has a peak force of 55 Gs. It is 5 Gs at the point of actuation. Now, the clears is a force of 65 Gs and 55 Gs at the point of actuation, which shows you how much more force is required for the clears.
Yeah, so if you just naturally type heavier, then you definitely want the clears instead of the browns. It's just going to help you avoid more mistakes.
Okay, the last of the 3 switches is the Cherry MX Reds. Now, like the clear, they're like a version of the previous ones. It's like a version of the blacks, but is a lighter. These are thought to be another quote-unquote gaming switch, so it requires less force than the blacks to actually be accurate. So it's for if you want the quick reactions and just quick. I don't think this would be good for typing, would it?
Not really, yeah. As it's been mentioned, these are more for gamers, and again, like, they tend to be a bit more expensive than what you would want out of a keyboard. You know, these were pretty hard to find a few years back. They're starting to come back, but again, production is a little bit on the limited side, so they're definitely going to be way more expensive than your average student can, you know, spare money on. So yeah, I would not recommend Cherry Reds.
Now there's a completely different type of key switch, buckling spring. Now,
oh my god, buckling springs!
Can you explain what these are?
Okay, so everyone knows what a spring is, right? You know, it goes boing. But when you use them in a keyboard, the key press will cause the spring to sort of bend outwards and buckle, literally. So these are going to be really loud, but you're going to get a really great tactile feedback, way better than the Cherry Blue. And of course, the clicky sound feedback is going to be better than any of the Cherry key switches. And one of the more popular keyboards featuring these is the IBM Model M, which are starting to make a comeback from the good old days of computers. And really, these key switches are really great for typists. But I do not recommend these for taking notes during class, because they're really loud, and they're definitely going to disturb people.
Yeah, so buy yourself in your house or door. Okay, now the next one I believe is the Alps. Now, you have a lot more experience with Alps than I do.
Yeah, I've got a keyboard with simplified white Alps. You know, I got it pretty cheap. Oh god, I love this. I'm just pressing some keys right now.
Oh,
and there are different types of Alps. You know, I'm just gonna bring the microphone closer and let you listen to the typing sound. Can you hear that?
Clicky and tactile. Yes.
I love this. Okay. So, this is a bit louder than what you would expect from a Cherry Blue keyboard. But so that might be disturbing to some people, especially if you don't like your keyboards to be so clicky. But again, you get the clicky feedback. So there are a bunch of different Alps out there, and there's a lot of different kinds of variations on them. But the two most basic types are the black Alps and the white Alps. And the ones you're most likely to find are the simplified versions.
Yeah.
So with the blacks, it's going to be tactile without getting the clickiness. So with the black Alps, your actuation force will be pretty significant. It says about 60 grams for the 60 Gs, not grams, for the simplified black switches, and 70 G for the complicated. Again, simplified are going to be much easier to find, so 60 Gs. The key travel distance is 3.5 millimeters, so it's gonna feel very different from most of the Cherry switches.
That's
1 millimeter difference.
5 millimeters. Yeah.
1.5
1.5?
because yeah, the Cherries actuate at 2 millimeters.
Yeah. Okay.
So you're pressing down a bit more, which means it's far more likely that you're going to bottom out. But if you get used to it, you could potentially be a little bit faster. And then there's the White Alps, which are what I'm using. Again, actuation force is about 60 to 70 Gs. Key travel 3.5 millimeters to actuation. And yes, these are tactile and clicky, which is why I love them. Now, I haven't typed on Black Alps, so I can't really say if it's going to be loud or not, but for the White Alps, simplified versions at least, they're going to be loud. So you do not want to use them during class, but I can honestly say that you do want to write essays on them, especially if you're a touch typist and you get above 60 to 70 words per minute on average. So, yeah.
The last of these very expensive and complicated key switches, which it may seem a bit intimidating to many people if they go search up, oh, I want to see which this keyboard, these sound great, search up price line on keyboards, realize the keyboard's really expensive. If you're fine with your laptop keyboard, you're fine. If you want something that a bit more, you could have these. The last one here is the Toper key switches. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's like a hybrid. It has like a rubber. It's like your chick with the rubber, but then has a spring underneath that actually goes up. It's a bit complicated. Underneath the rubber dome, the depression of the spring causes changing capacitance between the underlying capacitor pads, which with its change in capacitance, the switch activates. So they're considered really nice. They offer a very enjoyable typing experience with a quieter experience, so it's not as loud, but you will get that tactile feedback. And they actually have they're very smooth use of. Have you ever used these before?
No, unfortunately I wasn't able to, and I haven't been able to find anyone that's used these. But from what I'm looking at and from what I understand right now, these are probably the kind that you're going to want to use to take notes, because quiet action along with the tactile feedback, you're going to be able to go pretty fast without disturbing too many people. I can't really be sure about how expensive keyboards with Toper key switches will be, so I'm just gonna Google that pretty quickly.
Okay, while you Google that, I'll continue with this. Remember, when you go out to buy code, try and test them if you can. Make sure you know what key is right for you. If you say that, oh yeah, this sounds like nice, I would love sound feedback. Then you buy it before you test it out. Then you realize having this loud click, 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 click every time you hit a button.
You might not want that.
Yeah, you might not want that. So make sure you always try to
test it out for at least like a good 5 to 10 minutes of constant non-stop typing on that keyboard. Okay, so I've Googled the prices of some Toper key switches, keyboards with those, and they're pretty expensive. All of the ones I'm finding are above, most are above $200.
Oh, well that's... And
now, in comparison, the more expensive Cherry switches, well, keyboards with those would be around a good $100 to $200.
So,
you know, like you could get some as cheap as $60 on sale. So you might not want to go for these unless you have a lot of money to throw around on a keyboard.
Okay. Now, what would you actually throw your money at? Here, what would you recommend for them? Just for price-wise, if they're looking for a deal.
Price-wise, and balancing out price and quality, I would recommend the Cherry Brown. For typing, I would recommend a Cherry Brown. You should be able to find a bunch of different manufacturers that sell these. I think Razer might sell some, but they'll be overpriced as usual.
Yep.
It would be kind of hard to find good mechanical keyboards at your local computer store, so you might have to order online, like on Newegg.com. But if you look around, I think there's a bunch of different manufacturers, and their names are escaping me right now. Let me just look that up real quick.
Music, go.
Oh, okay, I just remembered one. There's the Ducky keyboards. They might be a little bit expensive for you. Yeah, you're gonna have to get them shipped in, but they're gonna be really great. I've seen a lot of people using those Duckies, and they love it. They've actually started collections. You could go for DOS keyboards. I think you have to get them shipped in from Germany or somewhere. DOS? Yeah, DOS keyboard, DAS.
Okay, so not...
They make really great keyboards. I want some DOS keyboards. But they might be a little bit more expensive than what you want. I believe the DOS Pro is on sale at Canada Computers for $109. They've got cherry blue.
So I just went to their website, and it's badass typing. Elite typists don't look down keys. High quality mechanical keyboard.
Yeah, they tend to be a little bit elitist. So unless you have some money to throw around and a couple of days to get used to your keyboard, then you might not want to go for DOS. But if you do, go for it. And there's of course the CM Storm that I'm seeing. From what I've seen, they tend to sell really great keyboards. This is a Cooler Master, that's what CM stands for. They tend to sell really great keyboards. I think the pricing is reasonable. They should have cherry browns that I recommended. And what else? There's Steel Series, but those are another gaming company, so they'll definitely be overpriced. And I checked them out; they are overpriced, but they do have great keyboards. So unless you have a lot of money to throw around, I would find myself doing a lot of research, looking for the best deals. No, that's it for mechanical keyboards. But as we all know, not all keyboards are mechanical.
Yes. You would have better knowledge in the other types of keyboards. I personally have only used my laptop keyboard, and I have felt using it only since I am using these horrible keys. I get my hands cramped occasionally, and I've actually lost one of my keys where I had to use the little rubber things as a button, and that's a very important key. So I have to, at the end of my mouse replaces that. One of the buttons I use as my key, which is not a good thing to do, because you want to.
Yeah, that is definitely not the ideal scenario.
No.
To avoid that, you could try to look at the types of keyboards that Lenovo used to use. They're scissor key switches. They're a bit more reliable and more, I guess, friendly for typists than most chiclet or membrane keyboards are. But I actually haven't seen those on the market recently. Even Lenovo is starting to replace their keyboards with chiclet keys. So, if you're okay with chiclet keys, then go for it. I'm not going to be judging you. But honestly, I cannot type well on chiclet keyboards. A lot of people I've seen can't. So you might want to actually find that one of the older, something that looks a lot like the older Lenovo keys. And I'll put a picture on screen.
Now, for people who want to save space, I don't think you're going to be buying a keyboard. I think you're just going to be using your laptop keyboard.
Yeah.
This section has not applied to you at all. But maybe you can look into a laptop that has a keyboard, like with these different types of keys, and hopefully this helped you. Is that us done with the keyboard section?
Yeah, we're done with keyboards now.
Oh, wonderful. So, how are we going to end this thing?
I honestly have no idea. Why don't we just talk for 5 minutes about how we're going to be ending this?
Maybe. How do you think it should go? Like, should we be like, great ending? Or maybe it's the most meta thing ever. What if we have an ending where we're talking about great endings, where we're talking about great endings? It's the most meta thing ever. No one...
Are you saying that would be the greatest ending ever?
I think it would.
Because I think a greater ending would be to not talk about great endings.
Talk about what? Like, puppies and kittens?
Hey, I prefer kittens. What about you?
Yeah, cats fall apart in my hands, I feel. Pick up a cat and it just goes limp. Like, what are you doing?
And...